Hi everyone, I'm back. It's been a little while. Apologize, I've had pretty busy last couple of weeks. I want to talk some more about some plants. Let's continue the vein of invasive plant medicine, right? Just because there's a bunch of them around here that I want to talk about. One of them's right behind me. It's the ash juniper. Juniper's ashy. This applies, what I'm saying, to most of the junipers, maybe all of the junipers you're going to find in the wild in the US. The one that you're going to find, the species you're going to find online if you go buy the juniper berry, and I brought a couple of berries out from the apothecary of this, the communis berry is going to be a little bit larger berry than we would find with the ash juniper here, and it's sweeter. It's you can actually nibble on the communis on the one that you would buy online. It's a gentler medicine, but still very effective. This is one of those that I use the berry. The berry, of course, is actually a cone, but I use the berry. I also use the needles or the leaves. In general, as far as I know, all the species that are growing naturally in the U.S. that you're going to find naturally in the U.S. are going to be medicinally analogous to what I'm saying. There are a few landscaping varieties that I believe originate more from Europe area that are toxic. So you have to be a little bit careful of that. So don't use the juniper out in your yard if you got it off of landscaping. And I can't tell you specifically the botany behind that. If I've ever learned it, I've forgotten it. But I'll just tell you what I do know and what I use. So the thing about the juniper berry internally, it's one of those herbs that you would use near the beginning of, for instance, a upper respiratory tract infection, when you're starting to really feel that, cold or flu coming on. It's something that you can use in the beginning of a lower urinary tract infection. It's a very good diuretic. It's one of those that really, you can think about it sort of like prickly ash. If you use prickly ash, especially the berry, it's kind of similar to that in the sense that it does that. It dispels, damp cold would be one way of thinking about it from a traditional Chinese medicine standpoint even. This is also true of its external use. So there's a term that people use sometimes for this berry or this plant and plants like it, which is counter-irritant. It increases circulation through sort of a minor inflammatory process when you put it, for instance, on the skin. Juniper berry is one of my favorite herbs to put into any kind of musculoskeletal liniments or salves, for anything from osteoarthritis to just aches and pains to minor injuries, to musculoskeletal injuries, increasing healing in an area, even attend to all of the soft tissue injury that's going to happen around, say, a broken bone when it's healing. All of those things. It increases the circulation, the microcirculation to an area, and I do use it fairly similar to how I use prickly ash in that regard as well. So it increases, and it's a rubefacient, increases vascularity to the area so that you're going to get more constituents from all of your herbs into that area, right? Transdermally, you're going to get just more absorption into the bloodstream and into that area, and it heats everything up really well, and it's a really good, I hate to use the term anti-inflammatory, but it really is. And it may be through its counter-irritant properties that it does that it increases inflammation in a certain area and reduces it in another. Now, a lot of these oils that are in it, it's very high in essential oils. It makes a great essential oil, for instance, and you can buy the essential oil. These essential oils are better derived from the plant if you're going to do that fresh, but I usually make my medicine from it dried. There's a lot of different ways you can make medicine from this. If you're just in a rush and you're just trying to make something good, what I'll do is I'll make like with my liniments or with my tinctures, I'll percolate the dried berry. I'll take the berry and I'll grind it to a kind of a coarse grind, and then I'll put it into a percolation cone, and then I'll percolate it at about 60 to 70% alcohol for anything internal. And I'll do it at like a 91% isopropyl alcohol for anything external, for a liniment. So I mix it externally. That's primarily how I use it. I'll mix it externally for, with things like arnica, of course, and prickly ash that I mentioned before, and red sage, Salvia miltiorhiza, and yarrow. Those are herbs that it goes really well with externally. The thing is, if you're going to make a salve out of it, if you're going to put it into an oil and infuse the oil with it, it'll do fine in an oil. But I prefer to do an alcohol salve. So I'll take it and I'll soak it just barely supersaturated in isopropyl alcohol first, and then I'll take that and mix that in with the oil. So that's called an alcohol salve. And I don't have time to get into the details of that here. That's something that if you took any of our external medicine making courses or multi-frac, you'd find out about if you don't already know how to do that. The other way, though, that I use the berry and the leaf or the needle is that I use it in a respiratory, like steam inhalations. Works really well for that. So this is a great way to help open up really clogged sinuses at the beginning, again, of a cold and a flu. When you get that, the mucosa is just really clogged and swollen, really good for that. It works very well for that. And of course, you're going to get just that, all of those essential, the very aromatic volatile oils are going to come off of that. So for that reason, I don't usually do it as a multifractional when I'm making it for internal use. I like to get that with the alcohol, but you could, it's just if you're going to do a multifractional, it would work, especially with the fresh berry. But I would say a very short decoction. Don't decoct. This isn't when you'd be decocting for, an hour. It would be like a decoction for maybe 10 minutes and keeping the lid on, and then going ahead and straining and doing the alcohol portion of it as well. Okay, so respiratory tract, urinary tract is a really good, what I would call an aquaretic. It's not a diuretic per se, it's an aquaretic. It increases the flow of blood through the kidneys as part of its, eliminative function. It's an eliminative herb. And so in that process, you're going to urinate a lot more. Very good for urinary tract infections in that way. And it does have a very kind of an antiseptic quality to it that makes it to the urinary tract. So it's a good UTI herb. Now, I avoid it for upper UTI infections. So, I avoid anything but the hospital for an upper UTI infection. If somebody has, pyelonephritis or is showing signs of that, that's a red flag. That's hospital. That's IV antibiotics, right? If you have to deal with it, if you had to deal with it, though, I wouldn't put this in there because it is, especially this species. The communis wouldn't be such a big deal, but this species is strong and is probably a little bit aggressive and a little bit aggravating to the kidney, in my opinion. On that note, carries that same rubefacient, counter irritant kind of quality with it to the urinary tract, probably too, right? But for bladder infection, lower urinary tract infection, absolutely very useful. I only use it in formulas. I would never use this by itself in that regard. I only use it in formulas that are going to direct it, in whatever body system that I'm working with. The gut as well, so it'll give you that same. It's kind of like a heating bitter. I think probably one way to consider this, if you're thinking of it from a TCM perspective, would be something to help support and tonify spleen yan, right? So someplace where we had more cold than heat, I consider it like a heating bitter as opposed to something like gentian that's really more of a cooling bitter. And the nice thing about it is when you take it internally, some of those constituents come out through the respiratory tract, sort of like garlic does. Like if you take garlic and 2 days later, a day later, you're breathing garlic. It's not from your digestive tract that smell is coming from. It's through your respiratory tract. It's an eliminative herb that comes out through that. Increases sweating to some extent as well. But again, my primary usage of this herb really is for external use, for musculoskeletal pain, for arthritic pain, for trauma, external trauma. It is just superlative for that, using some of the herbs that I mentioned earlier as well. And I would say I probably use it that way about 80% of the time. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll come back with some more invasive plant medicine next week. Hopefully I can get to you once a week. And if you like this, share the video, like it, all that stuff. Hope to see you around next time. Thanks.